I never imagined my own parents could be so cruel. The day they left my 6-year-old son, Daniel, alone at a church in rural Tennessee just to punish me was the day everything changed. And why? Because I refused to give my reckless younger brother $30,000 for yet another one of his guaranteed investment, Daniel's teacher Wilson, entures. Families should protect our children, not use them as weapons in their manipulative games. What happened afterward stunned even the local sheriff's department. Before I share the rest of this nightmare, drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. And hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever had to stand up to toxic family members. And just wait, what happened 3 months later will leave you speechless. Growing up in the Bennett family in a small town outside Knoxville, Tennessee, things looked picture perfect. Our porch was always decorated for the season, the lawn neatly trimmed, our family smiling in church. But behind the curtains, my parents, Gerald and Linda Bennett, had a very clear pecking order. I, Caroline, was the responsible daughter, the one expected to excel without complaint. My younger brother Brandon was the golden child. When he failed, he was just finding himself. When I succeeded, it was barely acknowledged. Mom would say, "Caroline, you're naturally strong. Brandon needs more support." That phrase defined my childhood. So, I stopped expecting fairness. I learned to rely on myself. By 20, I was juggling 2 jobs and putting myself through a digital media program in Nashville. No loans, no help, just grit. I landed internships that turned into job offers and built a solid career in branding. Meanwhile, Brandon floundered, dropping out of college, quitting jobs, chasing big break ideas. And every time, my parents bailed him out without hesitation. At 29, I was a single mom raising Daniel, my bright, curious 6-year-old. When Brandon came to me begging for $30,000 for his latest real estate scheme, I finally said no. That's when things escalated. My parents called me selfish, ungrateful. They insisted I owed it to the family. Days later, while I was away at a weekend conference, they offered to watch Daniel. I trusted them. Instead, they left him alone on a bench outside their church with a note taped to his jacket. His mother needs to learn her lesson. The pastor found him crying. The police were called. And that was the last day I ever let my parents near my child again. But what happened after that? The fallout was just beginning. And I was done being the quiet one. Robert and I were together for 2 wonderful years before getting married in a small ceremony under the maple trees outside Nashville. My parents came, tight-lipped and awkward, acting as if they were doing me a favor. Brandon didn't show up at all. Still, Robert and I built a life rooted in love, patience, and shared ambition. When we decided to start a family, it felt like a new beginning, a chance to create the stable, supportive home we never had growing up. When our son Daniel was born, that was 6 years ago. He filled our world with a light I never thought possible. My parents took a sudden interest, not in me, but in playing the role of doting grandparents. I welcomed it for Daniel's sake. Then, everything shattered. 2 years ago, Robert was killed on site during a construction project. A beam gave way unexpectedly. And just like that, the man who held my world together was gone. I was 27, widowed, and left to raise our 4-year-old son alone. Grief nearly drowned me, but Daniel needed stability, so I fought. I poured my energy into the branding studio Robert and I had started, working late nights, juggling school pickups and meetings, always with a brave face. My parents? They offered minimal help, occasional babysitting and uncomfortable holiday dinners. Most of their energy went into propping up Brandon's latest disasters. There was the smoothie bar idea that tanked, the online business that never launched, the used car lot scheme that ended in repossession. Every misstep was met with sympathy, excuses, and, most of all, money. Still, I kept the peace. Daniel deserved to know his grandparents, and despite their flaws, they genuinely seemed to care about him. But their affection came laced with guilt trips and comparisons I tried hard to ignore. Tension simmered at every family gathering. My father always found a moment to whisper, "You know, you could really help your brother. Your business seems to be doing fine. Dad, I said last Thanksgiving, I'm a solo parent running a design studio, not a personal ATM. He frowned. Family supports family. You've always been selfish with your success. I swallowed the insult, like I always had, for Daniel. But then came that rainy Tuesday afternoon. I was knee-deep in a deadline when Brandon showed up at my home office unannounced, soaked but smug, dressed in designer clothes I knew he couldn't afford. Immediately, my gut told me something was wrong. "Caroline, my favorite sister!" Brandon grinned, arms wide for a hug. I returned stiffly. "You say that like you've got options," I muttered, stepping aside and gesturing toward the kitchen. "Coffee? I've got about 20 minutes before my next client call." Brandon followed me in, rambling about the weather, a movie he saw, and asking how Daniel was doing. But I recognized the rhythm. This wasn't just a casual drop-in. Brandon never showed up unless he needed something. Sure enough, once he settled on a stool at my kitchen island, coffee in hand, he leaned forward with that overly excited gleam in his eye. "I've got something big, huge, a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, and I wanted to come to you first, before I take it to my usual investors." I raised an eyebrow. "Usual investors? You mean mom and dad?" He waved that off like I was being ridiculous. "This is different. It's guaranteed success." I waited, silently bracing. "Cryptocurrency, Caroline. I've got inside information. There's this new coin, Surecoin. It's about to blow up. I've talked to people in the space. Real insiders. Triple returns, minimum. Possibly more. You get in now, and you're looking at a 200% profit in 6 months." I sipped my coffee, expression neutral, as he pulled out his phone to show me a series of charts and projections I didn't ask for. "I just need a little startup capital," he added casually. $30,000 should do it." I nearly spat out my drink. 30,000! "Brandon, are you serious?" "It's not a gift. It's an investment," he said quickly, his voice tightening. "I'll pay you back, with interest. In 6 months, I'll give you $50,000. Guaranteed." "And what if it fails?" I asked, already knowing where this was going. "It won't. I've done my research. These guys know what they're doing." "These guys?" I pressed. "Who exactly are you working with?" He gave me a vague explanation about tech pioneers, blockchain developers, and digital trends. The more he talked, the more my alarm bells rang. That night, after he left, still promising to send over a pitch deck, I did my own research. Everything I found on Surecoin screamed scam. Anonymous founders, no transparency, and impossible return promises. The next day, Brandon called 3 times before I finally picked up. "So, are you in?" he asked, skipping any greeting. "I'm sorry, Brandon. I can't loan you that kind of money," I said firmly. "There are too many red flags." He exploded, calling me selfish, bitter, even jealous. And when the guilt trips didn't work, the threats began. "Fine. I'm telling mom and dad you refused to help your own family, when you clearly could. You've always been the disappointment anyway." "Brandon, I'm a single mom," I said calmly, though my chest was tightening. "I have a mortgage, a 6-year-old, and a business to run. Robert's life insurance went straight into Daniel's college fund. I don't have $30,000 to throw at your latest fantasy." He hung up without another word. That evening, the fallout began. My phone buzzed with my mother's number. I didn't even get a hello. "Caroline, how could you turn your back on your brother like this?" she snapped. "Mom, I looked into the investment. It's shady at best, dangerous at worst. I'm trying to protect him. And you." "We've always known you were jealous of Brandon," my father chimed in. "But sabotaging his future? That's a new low." The next few days were a barrage of calls, each more guilt-laced than the last. I stayed calm, even offered to help Brandon vet legitimate investment ideas. But they didn't want advice. They wanted money. Exactly 1 week after Brandon's visit, my father called again. This time, his tone was icy. "We're helping Brandon ourselves," he said flatly. "We're taking a second mortgage on the house. That's what real family does." "Dad, please don't. This coin is a scam. You're risking everything." "We don't need your opinion," he snapped. "But remember this. Family takes care of family. You've chosen not to. There will be consequences. Then he hung up. I stared at my phone, stunned. What kind of consequences could they possibly mean? I brushed it off as another manipulation tactic and turned my focus to work and caring for Daniel. I had no idea they would go after my child. It was a Tuesday afternoon. School dismissal had come and gone. I was parked in my usual spot outside Daniel's elementary school. But he never came out. The playground was emptying. The crossing guard waved goodbye to the last of the kids. Still no Daniel. Panic gripped me. That's when Mrs. Wilson, Daniel's teacher, walked over, her expression puzzled. "Is everything okay, Miss Bennett?" "Number Daniel hasn't come out yet." Her eyes widened. "Oh, but he was picked up early today." My stomach dropped. "Picked up by who?" "Your parents," she said. "They had the family authorization from the beginning of the year. They said there was a family emergency." My blood ran cold. I hadn't spoken to my parents since that final argument, and now they had my son. Why would they take Daniel without telling me? I called my parents repeatedly as I sped home from the school, hoping, praying they'd be there with him. No answer. I drove to their house next. Lights off. No car in the driveway. Still no answer. Each call went straight to voicemail. I tried everyone. Neighbors, family friends, even Brandon. Nothing. By the time dusk fell, I was desperate. I'd already knocked on doors, enlisted neighbors to help search, called local hospitals, and was preparing to file a missing child report when my phone rang. The number was unfamiliar. "Hello? This is Caroline Bennett?" "Ms. Bennett, this is Father Paul from St. Luke's Church over in Fairview. I believe I have your son with me." The 15-minute drive to the church felt like forever. I burst through the chapel doors, frantic, and found Daniel in a small office, sitting quietly beside a kind-looking priest and a woman offering him a styrofoam cup of hot chocolate. "Mommy!" he cried, leaping into my arms. I dropped to my knees, hugging him so tightly I could barely breathe. "Are you okay? Did anyone hurt you?" I asked, running my hands over his arms and face, just to make sure. "I'm okay," he whispered. "But Grandma and Grandpa said you didn't want me anymore. They said you picked money over family. So I had to stay here until you learned your lesson." I choked on a sob, clutching him closer. Father Paul gently explained that Gerald and Linda had dropped Daniel off earlier that afternoon, saying he needed temporary shelter while I sorted out my priorities. They left a small backpack, a change of clothes, and a note. Suspicious, Father Paul spoke with Daniel and managed to get my name and contact info. The police arrived shortly after to take statements. Officer Diana Murray was calm with Daniel, offering him a sticker and speaking gently, but her tone shifted when she spoke to me. Cold, clear, professional. "So," she said, pen poised, "your parents took your son from school and abandoned him at a church because you refused to give your brother $30,000? When she said it like that, the weight of what they'd done finally crashed down. This wasn't some family feud. It was child abandonment. That night, Daniel and I curled up on his bed, surrounded by stuffed animals. He clung to me. "Mommy, why did Grandma and Grandpa leave me? Did I do something wrong?" "No, baby," I whispered, stroking his hair. "You did nothing wrong. They made a very bad decision. But I'm here now, and no one's ever taking you away again." Still, he woke screaming 3 times, afraid he'd be left behind again. I lay beside Daniel, his little fingers wrapped tightly around mine, his body tense, even in sleep. Each nightmare made my anger grow. How could my own parents do this? How dare they use my child as leverage in a twisted vendetta? The next morning brought a knock on the door. A social worker named Rebecca Martinez introduced herself with a warm but professional demeanor. "I'm here to assess Daniel's well-being," she explained gently. "We understand you're the victim here, Ms. Bennett, but in any case involving possible child abandonment, we have protocols to follow." I nodded, exhausted but cooperative. Rebecca sat with Daniel, asking gentle questions while I gathered the documents she needed. Birth certificate, school records, emergency contacts. I appreciated her calm presence, though it made everything feel even more real. Meanwhile, my phone was blowing up, with judgment, not support. Somehow, Gerald and Linda had crafted a version of events where they were the concerned grandparents watching Daniel, while I sorted out my life. According to them, I had refused to help the family in a time of crisis. The truth was being buried beneath family loyalty and denial. Then came a blessing in the form of my best friend, Alicia Morgan. She showed up unannounced with 2 grocery bags and a fierce hug. "This is insane," she muttered as she helped make lunch. "Have your parents completely lost their minds?" "Apparently," I said, scrolling through my phone. I'd been blocked by my parents, Brandon, and half my extended family. They've cut me off and are telling everyone I've lost it. "What can I do?" she asked. "Just being here helps," I told her truthfully. "But I need a lawyer, and probably a therapist." By the end of that week, I had both. Patricia Carter, a no-nonsense family attorney, agreed to represent me. I also scheduled an appointment with Dr. Wesley Green, a child psychologist recommended by Daniel's school counselor. The financial strain hit fast: legal fees, therapy, and fewer work hours as I focused on Daniel's recovery drained my savings. But the emotional toll was worse. Daniel clung to me constantly. He cried at drop-off. He asked every night, "You won't leave me too, right?" One unexpected comfort came from Daniel's school. His teacher set up a meal train. The principal added extra pickup security. Parents I barely knew offered help, and even my clients were understanding. "Take care of your boy," one emailed. "The work can wait." But the deeper reality settled in. My own parents had traumatized my child to punish me, and I was left wondering, how do you explain to a 6-year-old that the people who are supposed to love you most can also hurt you the deepest? The courthouse loomed ahead, cold and heavy against the overcast Tennessee sky. I gripped Daniel's latest therapy appointment card in my hand as if it might steady me. Attorney Patricia Carter had called an emergency meeting in her office to discuss filing formal charges against my parents. "You understand?" she said gently, motioning toward the paperwork. "Once we move forward with this, there's no going back." Her office was lined with framed degrees and hand-drawn thank you notes from children and parents she'd helped over the years. But today, it felt more like a courtroom than a sanctuary. "Child abandonment is serious, Caroline," she continued. "Your parents could face jail time." I nodded, trying to keep my voice from shaking. "They left my 6-year-old son at a church with a backpack and a note because I wouldn't give my brother $30,000, and they told him I didn't want him anymore." Still, my pen hovered above the signature line. They were my parents, broken, manipulative, but also the people who'd once bandaged scraped knees and cheered at graduations. The weight of betrayal tangled with the guilt of accountability. "Take your time," Patricia said softly. "What would you do?" I asked, barely above a whisper. She took off her glasses and leaned forward. "Caroline, I can't answer that for you, but in 20 years, I've never seen a child heal from trauma by pretending it didn't happen." I signed the papers. That afternoon, Daniel sat across from Dr. Wesley Green, slowly placing plastic toy figures on a miniature playground. I watched quietly behind the observation glass as he placed the child figure alone inside a cardboard box. "He's processing abandonment through symbolic play," Dr. Green explained. "He's making progress." "Is he getting better?" I asked. "Healing isn't a straight line," he replied. "But he's expressing, not suppressing, and that's encouraging." Still, Daniel's nightmares hadn't stopped. Some nights he'd wake screaming, convinced his grandparents were taking him again. School mornings turned into emotional negotiations. His teacher noted that Daniel now avoided other children and clung to adults. While Daniel wrestled with invisible monsters, I battled visible ones. Filing charges ignited a storm within the family. Cousins sent angry messages. Aunt Catherine left a voicemail calling me ungrateful. Others stayed silent, their absence louder than any words. Then, out of nowhere, the phone rang. It was Aunt Helen, my father's estranged sister, whom I hadn't seen in over a decade. Her voice cracked with emotion. "Caroline, I heard what happened. And I believe you. I've lived under Gerald's shadow too long. You're doing the right thing." "Caroline, it's Helen." The voice crackled over the phone. "I heard what happened, and I just want you to know, You're doing the right thing. We met for coffee the next morning at a quiet diner just outside town. Aunt Helen, my father's estranged sister, looked older than I remembered, but just as sharp. Over steaming mugs, she unfolded a history I'd never been told. Your father was the golden child too, she said. Our parents emptied their savings into his ideas. One failed venture after another. Meanwhile, I was told to be strong, to fend for myself. Sounds painfully familiar, I replied. I finally cut ties when they refused to help with my late husband's medical bills, but gave Gerald money for a boat the same month. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Breaking the cycle is hard, but necessary. Her words grounded me for what came next. Our first court appearance. Walking into the courthouse and seeing Gerald and Linda flanked by their attorney was surreal. They looked smaller somehow, aged, brittle, but there was no remorse in their eyes. My mother glanced up, fleetingly. My father wouldn't look at me at all. The session was brief, but brutal. Father Paul's statement was read aloud, describing how Daniel was found alone at the church with a note. My parents pleaded not guilty. Their attorney argued they'd left Daniel in a safe space during what they claimed was my emotional crisis. It was a complete lie. Outside, as I reached my car where Alicia waited with Daniel, Brandon stormed up. "You happy now?" he growled. "Mom and Dad could go to jail because you're too selfish to help family." "They abandoned my son," I snapped. "This isn't about a loan anymore. They mortgaged their house to help me because you wouldn't lift a finger," he shouted, red-faced. "Now they could lose everything." That was their choice, just like leaving Daniel at a church was their choice. His expression twisted into something meaner. "You always thought you were better than us. Enjoy your moral high ground while our family falls apart." Later, when I learned my parents had actually mortgaged their house, it hit me harder than expected. But I couldn't take responsibility for choices they made as adults, not when those choices nearly destroyed my child. Weeks passed. The legal wheels turned slowly, and when Daniel's 7th birthday arrived, no call came, no card, nothing. He didn't say much, but I saw it in his eyes. "Sometimes," I said softly as we ate cake, "the people we love make choices that hurt us. That doesn't mean you ever deserved it. It doesn't mean we did anything wrong," I told him softly. "Will they ever love me again?" Daniel asked. His voice was steady, but his eyes shimmered with hurt, far too deep for someone his age. "They do love you," I said, though the words felt fragile. "They just don't know how to show it the right way." The stress bled into every corner of our lives. Anonymous phone calls rang through the night, always from blocked numbers. Then, one evening, a brick shattered our living room window. A note attached calling me a family destroyer. Then came a report from Daniel's school. A man had been seen loitering, asking about his schedule. I didn't take chances. I scraped together money I didn't have and had a security system installed the next day. Through all of it, Dr. Green's words became my anchor. "You're not responsible for other people's actions, only your response to them." And my response? To give Daniel stability. A safe, calm home. A place where love wasn't conditional. I considered moving. Maybe a fresh start in another town. But Daniel had already lost so much. Leaving behind his school and the few adults he trusted would have added more pain. So instead, I started redefining what family meant. "Family isn't always blood," I told him one night as we made picture frames for photos of Alicia and her husband, who had never once wavered in their support. "Sometimes family is who shows up when things are hard." As we neared the 3-month mark since my parents abandoned him, something inside me shifted. The betrayal, once sharp and raw, settled into a deeper resolve. I wasn't waiting anymore. For apologies, for remorse, for closure. I was moving forward, without them. Letting go of that hope hurt in its own way, but it was also freeing. Daniel deserved more than love with strings attached. So did I. Then, one afternoon, as I reviewed mock-ups for a client's rebranding project, a news alert flashed across my laptop. Major cryptocurrency scam busted. Investors lose millions. My hands trembled as I clicked. I already knew what I would find. It was SecureCoin, the same scam Brandon had tried to pull me into. The article detailed a massive fraud operation. The FBI had made multiple arrests, over $20 million stolen from investors. My phone rang. Patricia Carter. "Have you seen the news?" she asked. "I'm reading it now," I whispered, scanning the article for Brandon's name. "The FBI wants to speak with you. Apparently, your brother's name has come up in their investigation." I went cold. As a victim or a perpetrator? They wouldn't say over the phone. If this story has moved you, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us share more powerful journeys like Caroline's. And stay tuned. What happens next in Brandon's investigation will leave you stunned. "They're sending an agent tomorrow morning," Patricia told me. The next day, FBI agent Marcus Reynolds sat at my kitchen table. Calm, direct, and respectful. "To be clear, Ms. Bennett," he began, "we're investigating the operators behind SecureCoin. Your brother, Brandon Bennett, appears to have acted as a mid-level recruiter, bringing in new investors in exchange for commissions." I felt the words like a punch to the chest. "So, he wasn't just investing his own money?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "We believe he was recruiting others, including you," Agent Reynolds confirmed. "The $30,000 he asked from you would have bumped him into a higher commission tier." He flipped open his notebook. "Did he promise a specific return?" "Yes," I said, my voice quieter than before. "He said it would triple in 6 months." The agent nodded grimly. "Classic red flag. No legitimate investment can promise guaranteed returns like that." After answering more questions, I sat in silence, staring at the spot where Brandon had once pitched me this amazing opportunity. He hadn't just been conned, he'd helped con others. Willingly. And then the darker question crept in. Had my parents known? Had they mortgaged their home knowing it was for a fraud? A week later, Patricia called again. "Caroline, your parents' house is now officially in foreclosure. They haven't made payments in 3 months." "The money they gave Brandon," I whispered. "Yes, this doesn't change anything legally regarding Daniel's case, but I thought you should know." "Thank you," I replied, a complicated mix of sadness and grim clarity rising in my chest. Part of me felt a strange vindication. They had warned me of consequences for not helping Brandon. Now they were living the results of their own decisions. But mostly, I just felt tired. 2 days later, a knock at the door startled me. I opened it to see Gerald Bennett, my father, standing on the porch. He looked thin, disheveled, and somehow older than I remembered. "Dad," I said, instinctively stepping forward, then stopping myself. Daniel was at a playdate with Alicia's son, thankfully not home to witness whatever this was. "Caroline," he said quietly. "May I come in?" I hesitated, then stepped aside. We sat on opposite couches. "What do you want?" I asked. He looked around the house, Robert's and mine, now only mine. "The bank's taking the house," he finally said. "Your mother's staying with your cousin Susan." "I heard. It wasn't supposed to end like this," he murmured. "Brandon said it was a sure thing. Time-sensitive. Solid." "Nothing is a sure thing, Dad, especially not when it promises to triple your money in 6 months. His head snapped up. "You knew, didn't you?" he said bitterly. "That it was a scam. That's why you wouldn't give Brandon the money." "I suspected," I replied. "It sounded too good to be true. I tried to warn you." "You could have tried harder," he snapped. And for a moment, the old Gerald Bennett was back. Sharp, critical, unyielding. I stared him down. "Like you tried harder not to abandon your 7-year-old grandson at a church?" My voice rose. "What are you really doing here, Dad?" His shoulders slumped, the fire in him fading as quickly as it came. "We need help, Caroline," he said quietly. "Your mother and I, we have nowhere to go." For a moment, I said nothing. The audacity stunned me. They had left Daniel, their grandson, alone at a church, lied to him, told him I didn't want him. And now they were asking for a place to stay? "You want my help?" I asked, my voice cold. "After what you did?" Daniel still wakes up screaming. "We made a mistake," he mumbled, as if it were nothing more than a minor lapse in judgment. "A mistake?" I repeated. A mistake is forgetting to pick someone up. Burning dinner. What you did was calculated emotional abuse of a child. My child. We're still your parents, he said stiffly, his tone hardening. After everything we've done for you. Everything you've done for me? I cut him off. You mean everything you did for Brandon and ignored me in the process? When Robert died, you babysat Daniel exactly twice. I was running a business and grieving, and you were too busy helping Brandon start a smoothie truck. Just then, the front door opened. Mom, I'm home, Daniel called. He stepped into the living room with Alicia behind him, her cheerful expression faltering the moment she saw my father. Daniel froze. His shoulders tensed, and his hand reached for Alicia's. Grandpa? His voice was small, fearful. Dad, you need to leave, I said firmly, standing between them. Daniel, come give your grandpa a hug, my father said, ignoring me. Daniel shrank back, clutching Alicia's hand. No, thank you, he whispered. My father's face darkened. See what you've done? Turned him against his own family. Alicia, I said, keeping my voice calm. Could you take Daniel to his room for a minute? Once they were gone, I turned to face him. No longer a daughter begging for love, but a mother protecting her child. You did this, not me, I said firmly, locking eyes with him. You destroyed Daniel's trust the day you abandoned him, and now you're blaming me? We just need somewhere to stay, he muttered. Your mother and I need time to figure things out. No, I replied, my voice steady. I'm not bringing that kind of toxicity back into our lives. Daniel deserves better. I deserve better. So you're abandoning your own parents now? He snapped. After everything we've sacrificed for this family? I'm not abandoning you, I said. I'm setting boundaries. There's a difference. He stood, anger replacing his earlier guilt. Brandon was right about you. Always thought you were better than the rest of us. As he stormed toward the door, I called after him. Dad, I do hope you and Mom find your footing again, but it won't be by using me, or Daniel, ever again. After he left, I found Daniel in his room, quietly drawing. I sat beside him and gently explained what had happened. Sometimes adults make really bad choices when they're scared or angry, I told him. Like when I hit Eli last year for breaking my Lego ship? He asked. Something like that, I nodded. But bigger. Grandma and Grandpa made some very big mistakes. Now, they have to deal with the consequences. Are they going to be homeless? He asked, his little brow furrowed with concern. No, sweetheart, I reassured him. They have other family helping them, but they won't be staying here. Good, he whispered. They scare me now. His quiet honesty shattered something in me all over again. That evening, I received an anonymous email. Subject line, your brother knew. Attached were multiple documents, email threads between Brandon and the SecureCoin founders, detailing recruitment strategies and payout tiers. The worst part? A message from Brandon bragging about getting our parents to refinance their home. They're good for at least $150,000. Working on my sister too, but she's more skeptical. I forwarded everything to Patricia, who confirmed we should send it to the FBI. But before I did, I faced a hard question. Should I tell my parents? They probably wouldn't believe me. They never had. After consulting with Patricia and Dr. Green, I arranged a family meeting at Patricia's office, a neutral space with staff present, just in case. The FBI investigation was progressing, but Agent Reynolds agreed to delay their interview, at least until after the meeting. You're not obligated to give them this courtesy, Patricia reminded me gently as we prepared the room. But I wasn't doing it for them. I was doing it for closure. They certainly didn't offer any courtesy to you or Daniel, Patricia said gently. I know, I sighed. But I need to do this my way. I want to look them in the eyes when they find out what Brandon did. She gave a small nod, understanding my need for closure, even if she didn't fully agree with how I sought it. My parents arrived first. Linda and Gerald Bennett looked smaller somehow. My mother, always polished, had mismatched earrings, her hair pulled back in a frizzy bun. My father's anger had dissolved into quiet weariness. His eyes didn't hold the same defiance anymore, just fatigue. Brandon arrived last, striding in with that same smugness he wore like armor, designer sunglasses perched on his head, despite the gray skies outside, and a cocky grin on his face. "What is this? An intervention?" he joked, taking the chair farthest from me. "Something like that," I replied calmly. "Thanks for coming." "Can we make this quick?" he asked, checking his watch. "I've got a meeting with some investors later." "More crypto investors?" I asked, opening my laptop. "Like the ones from SecureCoin?" His grin faltered. "That situation was unfortunate. I was a victim too, you know." "Were you?" I turned the screen toward them, revealing the email thread. My mother gasped. "What is this?" she whispered. Evidence that Brandon wasn't just investing in SecureCoin, he was recruiting people, including you, including me, for commission. "That's ridiculous," my father said, though he leaned in to read the messages. "Where did this come from?" "An anonymous source," I said. "I had it verified by a digital forensics expert. It's authentic." Brandon shifted in his chair. "They're out of context. Everyone believed it was legit. I was trying to help people. A Ponzi scheme, Brandon. The only ones making money were the scammers and their recruiters. Like you." My mother's hand trembled as she pointed to one highlighted line. "They're good for at least $150,000. Working on my sister too, but she's more skeptical." Her voice cracked. "You knew? You knew we could lose the house?" "Mom, I was trying to help. If you'd invested sooner, before the feds stepped in." "The feds," my father repeated, paling. "Yes," I said. "The FBI has already made arrests. Agent Reynolds wants to speak with all of you. I asked him to wait until after this meeting." The room fell silent. The truth finally landed. Not like a slap, but a slow, suffocating weight. My mother began to cry silently, her shoulders trembling as she stared at the printed emails. My father sat frozen beside her, his eyes locked on Brandon with a slow-building realization. "We gave you everything," he said quietly. "Our savings, our house, our retirement." Brandon's swagger vanished. He leaned forward, suddenly desperate. "It wasn't supposed to collapse like this. I was going to fix it before anyone noticed." "With what money?" I asked sharply. "The money you were trying to get from me? Or from some other poor soul you plan to drag into this?" He didn't answer. Couldn't. My father turned to me then, his expression unreadable. "Why are you showing us this?" he asked. "To gloat? To say, 'I told you so'?" "No," I said firmly. "I'm showing you this because you're still my parents. You deserve the truth before you sit down with the FBI. And because, despite everything, I was trying to protect all of us, even Brandon." "So what now?" my mother whispered, dabbing her eyes with a crumpled tissue. "Are we supposed to thank you for this revelation?" Her bitterness didn't surprise me. The weight of decades of family dysfunction wasn't going to lift in one conversation. "Now," I said, straightening in my seat, "we talk about how to move forward." I passed around copies of a document Patricia had helped me prepare. A simple, clear agreement outlining boundaries, terms for any future relationship with me, and especially with Daniel. No unsupervised contact with Daniel unless he personally requests it. No visits without family therapy sessions with Dr. Green. A formal apology to Daniel. Full cooperation with the FBI. "This is ridiculous," my father scoffed, pushing the paper aside. "We don't need your permission to see our grandson." "Actually, you do?" Patricia said, her tone calm but firm. "Given the abandonment, any court would support Caroline's full discretion regarding contact with Daniel." "You're punishing us for one mistake," my mother protested. "It wasn't a mistake," I said quietly. "It was a choice. You used a child, your grandson, as leverage. And it wasn't just that moment. It was years of putting Brandon first, at any cost." I took a deep breath. "I'm not closing the door. I'm offering conditional forgiveness, a path forward. But understand this, Daniel will never again be collateral damage in this family's chaos." My father stood abruptly. "We're not signing this." He turned to my mother. "Come on, Linda, we're leaving." My mother hesitated, eyes flicking between my father and me. For a second, I thought she might stay. But then, silently, she stood and followed him toward the door. "The FBI will be in touch," I called after them. "Whether you cooperate or not is your choice, but it will impact the outcome." Brandon stayed seated, staring at the damning emails still open on my laptop. "You could have deleted those," he said quietly. "Protected me. Like you did for Mom, for Dad, for Daniel." "You didn't protect any of us," I replied. "Not me, not them, and definitely not Daniel." He flinched, the first honest reaction I'd seen from him all day. "I messed up," he admitted. "I got in over my head with gambling." That caught me off guard. "Gambling?" He nodded. "Started in college. Got worse after each failed business. The more I lost, the deeper I sank. Secure Coin looked like a way out." He rubbed his face, suddenly looking older than his years. "I never meant for it to get this far." "But it did," I said quietly. "And now we're all paying for it." Brandon nodded, the bravado gone at last. "What happens now? With the FBI?" he asked. "I don't know," I admitted. "That depends on what you tell them, how cooperative you are, and how much they already have on you." He hesitated. "And us? You and me?" I looked at him, really looked at him, and felt, not hatred, but a tired sadness. "I can't have you in my life right now. Maybe not ever," I said. "But if you want treatment for your gambling addiction, I'll help. That's all I can offer." He looked like he wanted to argue, then simply nodded. "I'd like that. The treatment, I mean." Just then, a commotion stirred in the hallway. Agent Reynolds appeared at the door, flanked by two plainclothes agents. "Brandon Bennett?" he asked formally. Brandon stood, face pale. "That's me." "We have a few questions about your involvement with Secure Coin," Reynolds said. "Would you come with us?" Brandon nodded. No handcuffs, no shouting. Just a man walking toward consequences. He glanced back at me one last time, a look caught somewhere between apology and accusation, before the door closed behind him. Patricia rested a hand on my shoulder. "You did what you had to do, for Daniel, and for yourself." I nodded, but I didn't feel triumphant. What I felt was closer to grief. Not for what I'd lost, but for what I finally saw clearly had never really been. 6 months later, Daniel and I stood in the living room of our new home, surrounded by half-unpacked boxes, in the quiet hope of a fresh start. We hadn't moved far, just enough to turn the page without uprooting everything. Daniel was still in the same school, surrounded by familiar teachers and friends who'd supported him through the worst. "Can I put my space posters up in my new room?" he asked one afternoon, already looking more relaxed than he had in months. "Absolutely," I smiled. "And maybe we'll even get some new ones." The decision to move came shortly after Brandon's legal case was finalized. He avoided prison by fully cooperating with federal investigators. Instead, he received 5 years of probation, mandatory gambling treatment, and hundreds of hours of community service. My parents lost their house, just as they feared, but with help from my cousin Susan, they found a modest apartment across town. Our relationship? Still distant. Progress had been slow, even glacial. They initially refused family therapy, insisting they'd done nothing truly wrong. But as the Secure Coin scandal unraveled publicly and Brandon's role became undeniable, their defenses began to crumble. About 3 months after our confrontation in Patricia's office, my mother reached out for the first time. She asked if she could send Daniel a birthday card. It was small, but significant. The card arrived with no guilt, no hidden messages. Just a simple note and a modest gift card. Daniel held it for a long time before asking, "Does this mean Grandma's not mad at me anymore?" "She was never mad at you," I said gently. "Sometimes grown-ups make bad choices when they're scared. But none of it was ever your fault." Dr. Green had been instrumental in helping Daniel understand and process it all. "He's developing healthy emotional boundaries," he told me during one session. "He's beginning to speak up about what makes him uncomfortable. That's huge for a child his age." That growth showed itself when Daniel, after receiving 2 more kind, simple cards, asked for a supervised visit with my mother. We met at a nearby park. Dr. Green came along, The visit lasted only 30 minutes. No drama, no tears, just cautious smiles and a short walk to the swings. We celebrated afterward with ice cream. My father remained more resistant. We'd spoken on the phone twice. Brief, stiff exchanges that never scratched below the surface. His journey, if it happened at all, would take longer. The most unexpected turn came in the form of a letter from Brandon. It arrived 3 months into his rehab program. "I'm working the 12 steps," he wrote. "Making amends is part of that, but I'm not asking for forgiveness. I just want you to know I'm finally facing my addiction and the harm it's caused." I had read Brandon's letter several times, unsure of how or whether to respond. In the end, I sent a short note, a quiet acknowledgement of his effort and a wish for success in his recovery. No promises, no reopening of old wounds. Professionally, things had taken an unexpected turn for the better. The focused energy I poured into my business, part survival, part control during chaos, had drawn attention. New clients, referrals, and even a bit of recognition in the design community came my way. I'd recently hired a part-time assistant, which allowed me to finally strike a healthier work-life balance. "Mom, can we invite Aunt Alicia and Uncle James for dinner once we're done unpacking?" Daniel asked one afternoon, carefully arranging his books on a new shelf. "That's a great idea," I smiled. "And maybe we could ask them if they'd want to be your godparents." "Officially?" His eyes lit up. "Really? That would be awesome." The suggestion hadn't been random. Alicia and James had been our rock through it all. Steady, generous, unwavering. When I cautiously asked if they'd consider being Daniel's legal guardians in the event something happened to me, they had embraced me with tears in their eyes and said yes without hesitation. "Family isn't just blood," Alicia had said that day, repeating the same words I'd once told Daniel. That truth had become the foundation of our rebuilding. We made new traditions: Sunday board game nights with friends, monthly volunteer days at the local food pantry, and adventure weekends, where Daniel and I explored a new place together, even if it was just a hidden hiking trail or an old bookstore. On the first evening in our new home, Daniel and I sat on the back porch, watching fireflies flicker under the twilight sky. "Mom, do you think people can really change?" he asked. "They can," I said, "but it takes time and real effort." "Why do you ask?" "I was thinking about Grandma and Grandpa and Uncle Brandon. Do you think they'll change?" I wrapped an arm around his shoulders. "I hope so, buddy. But what matters most is that we've changed. We're stronger now, and we know how to protect ourselves. And we have our chosen family," he added, repeating a phrase Dr. Green had taught him. "People who love us for who we are, not what we do for them." That night, as Daniel drifted to sleep in his new room, surrounded by space posters and half-open boxes, I sat quietly, reflecting on everything we'd survived. The last 9 months had been the hardest of my life, but also the most defining. I had learned that boundaries aren't punishments, they're protection, that family can hurt or heal depending on who we allow into that role, and that love never requires sacrificing safety or self-worth. 2 weeks after settling in, we hosted our housewarming party. Alicia and James, Dr. Green, Aunt Helen, Daniel's teacher, and our new neighbors filled our home with laughter. The healing wasn't over, but it was ours, honest, earned, and finally, on our terms. If you've stayed with me through this story, thank you. Sharing it hasn't been easy, but I believe stories like mine matter because too many of us stay silent while we suffer in the name of family. If any part of my journey resonated with you, I'd love to hear from you in the comments. Tell me, have you ever had to set boundaries with people who were supposed to love you unconditionally? Did it feel like a betrayal, even though you were just trying to protect yourself or your child? Please take a moment to leave a comment. Not just for me, but for others who might be going through something similar. Sometimes, knowing you're not alone is the very thing that gives someone else the strength to stand up for themselves. And if you believe in stories that highlight courage, healing, and second chances, I hope you'll subscribe to the channel and share this video. Your support helps us bring more of these powerful, real-life reflections to light. Here's my advice. From one survivor to another, you are not selfish for protecting your peace. You are not wrong for choosing your child's safety over family expectations. Love should never come at the expense of your dignity or your sanity. I've learned that boundaries aren't walls. They're bridges to healthier relationships, even if some people choose not to cross them. And sometimes, the most important family you'll ever have is the one you choose for yourself. Let this be your reminder. You are allowed to say no. You are allowed to heal. You are allowed to move forward on your terms. Because healing isn't about erasing the pain. It's about building something better with what's left.